Give me a good loaf of crusty bread. Give me good bread I can afford. Give me bread made by someone I know. Give me the whole loaf, not just half. Okay, if you can't give me what I want, then I'll make it myself. And it will be far better and cheaper than what you tried to sell to me. I'll even mill my own wheat to make it more nutritious. Hi, Old Fuzzface here. Let's get right to it. I'm a practical man. When I encounter problems, I try to find solutions. As you just saw in my short, finding good crusty bread at an affordable price is a problem. My solution was to make my own. Thanks to Farmhouse on Boone, the Rose Homestead, and especially Jill Winger at the Prairie Homestead, I now have the know-how to make a good loaf of sourdough bread every time. So, using Jill's recipe with my modifications, I'm going to show you how to make sourdough bread for a practical man. Let me introduce you to Mrs. Patmore, my sourdough starter. She's the true star of the show. If she isn't happy, my sourdough bread won't be happy. So, I take good care of her. In an upcoming video, I'll show you how Mrs. Patmore and I met and how I take care of her. I'll also describe some of her interesting characteristics. Our recipe calls for 3 cups of flour, approximately 375 grams. Although not so important now, in a future video, I'll describe why using a kitchen scale works better than relying on a measuring cup. As I said, I'm a practical man. Making the best use of time is important. So I have a very simple schedule that fits in perfectly with my daily routine. Here it is. So, consider how you schedule your day and then work out your own bread making routine. Now, let's see how this recipe works. In a large bowl, combine the starter and water. I usually pour the water into the bowl first and then add the starter. Why? Because a classic test for determining if your starter is ready is, if it floats in the water, it's ready to go. Then, combine the water and starter by stirring. Now add your 3 cups of flour. Stir in the flour a bit, and then add the salt. Now continue mixing until you get a wet dough. I use a Danish dough whisk, but you can use a fork or wooden spoon. Using your hands or a dough scraper, mix the dough into a rough ball. Keep the rough dough in the bowl, cover it, and let sit for 30 minutes. After this resting time is complete, stretch and fold the dough a few times to form it into a ball. You can use your hands or a dough scraper. Cover the dough with a clean dish towel and let it rise in a warm place overnight or until doubled in size, about 8 hours. If your kitchen is warm enough, you can just leave it on your stovetop or in the oven. If it's cold in the kitchen, put the dough in a warmer place or in your oven with the light on. In the morning, bulk fermentation should be complete. Your dough should have doubled in size. Turn the dough out on your counter. Fold it over a couple of times to tighten it into a ball, then let it sit for 15 minutes. If it looks like the dough might be overly sticky, you can put a little flour on the work surface. While the dough is resting, you can prepare your proofing basket or bowl. To avoid problems with sticking, I liberally cover the inside of the basket with flour. After baking, the excess flour is easily brushed away. After this resting period is complete, gently shape the dough into a ball once more and place into a well-floured proofing basket or a bowl lined with a well-floured dish towel. Remember to put it in seam side up. Then cover it with a towel. Let it rise again for 2 to 3 hours or until it's doubled. 2 hours usually works just fine for me. About 20 minutes before proofing is complete, preheat your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Use this time to sprinkle a thin layer of cornmeal in the bottom of a Dutch oven. This is optional. It helps the bottom of the loaf not to scorch. Tip the loaf out of the proofing basket onto a sheet of parchment. Lower the parchment into the Dutch oven. I have changed this procedure some because I use a silicone bread sling. All I have to do is place the sling over the top of the proofing basket and then place a pizza pan on top of that. With one quick flip, I turn over the basket and pan and set them on the countertop. Then I remove the proofing basket and transfer the sling with the bread to the Dutch oven. If the side of the sling doesn't rest flat on the bottom of the Dutch oven, I use a chopstick to tamp it down. Using a bread lane tool or a sharp knife, make 3 slashes on top of the bread. This allows for expansion during baking. Since I'm a practical man, fancy designs aren't necessary for me. Place the lid on the pot and bake for 20 minutes at 450 degrees. Remove the lid and bake for an additional 30 minutes or until the loaf is deeply browned and crispy on top. For a less crusty finish, bake for the entire time with the lid on. Move the loaf to a cooling rack and allow the loaf to cool completely before slicing it. Here is the reward for our effort: a beautiful loaf of sourdough bread. Using this recipe, the finished loaf usually weighs in at about 1.5 pounds. This loaf is 1 pound, 8.9 ounces. If all goes well, you can expect a loaf that looks like this with a well-formed crumb. In upcoming videos, I will explain more about what makes this recipe work. I will also show you how to vary the recipe by using your own milled wheat and ancient grains. So, subscribe to our channel, and we'll be looking forward to your comments. Happy cooking!